Hi, this is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny, sometimes Colorado. Today is January 7th, 2023. I been a little under the weather this weekend. Throat's a little sore, but I figured I'd spend some time with you guys, and you can hear my raspy Clint Eastwood voice make my day. It's been a good year. It's been a long year already. A whole week has already gone by in 2023. Can you guys believe it? It's pretty amazing. I tried to upgrade the internet a little bit. Finally got one of those 5G routers, but one of these days I'll be able to get microwave out here in the farm. We'll see. It's been an interesting year. So a lot of little things have happened. For example, the right click scandal. That's interesting. So for those of you who don't know what happened there, and this is an example of an AstroTurf scandal. I don't think anybody's actually upset about it, unless they're just really stupid. But there was a cool NFT that I saw on Twitter, and I went ahead and used it as a profile picture on Facebook and Twitter. It's a way to create some notoriety for the artist and the buyers. And it immediately sold for 10,000 ADA, so obviously it worked pretty well for the creator of the NFT. Well, anyway, then a bunch of people started writing articles, even appeared on cryptocurrency Reddit, saying that I've done something wrong by right-clicking and saving and posting an NFT. And I created a video where I pointed out that you don't actually own any intellectual property, and you have no rights to that picture when you own the NFT, unless it's explicitly in the NFT. That's what it was not. And I didn't actually think it was a real scandal. I actually thought that it was just made up and that people are just pulling my chains, pulling my legs. But there's apparently some people floating around there that this is the thing they care the most about. And I said, all right, well, good on you. Of course, cryptocurrency Reddit was always shitty. Anytime anything is mentioned about me, they can't help but attack me. But it is what it is. Overall, the space is chugging away, moving along. We have a Speaker of the House now, McCarthy. Same poop, different scoop, so probably not much will change. But that said, maybe they will pass something this year. I was pretty certain last year that we'd get some legislation this year for cryptocurrencies, but that was before the whole FTX scandal. FTX has caused a lot of harm, a lot of perception changes, and the industry is going through some hard times. Uncle Barry Silbert and DCG is getting hit. So that's going to be interesting to see what comes of Genesis and DCG and the rest of that empire. People will begin looking into entities like CoinDesk, perhaps Cointelegraph and others, and we'll see if they have completely objective journalism or not. Some of us suspect they don't, but we'll see. It'll be fun, be interesting. A clean bill of health is good for us all. But, the technology continues. SIP 1694 is out there. People are talking about it. Input endorsers, we're doing a really heavy lift. We're adding tiered pricing and all kinds of cool stuff for it. Hopefully the Ouroboros Laos paper for input endorsers will be out in the May-ish timeframe. Keeps getting pushed a little bit because it's such a complicated thing. But that'll be a good thing for the future of Cardano. Plutus continues to evolve. Lots of great conversations about data availability and these other things. So, we're getting it done little by little. It's a process. And this space has always been lots of inches followed by a mile. So 2021 was a mile and 2022 was lots of inches. And it looks like 2023 is probably going to be another lots of inches, meaning that you have to make small movements all the way through. And little by little, things will get where they need to go. What's up with the voice? Hope you're feeling well. A little raspy, had the flu. Get it from time to time. Almost fully recovered. Do another Lex Friedman podcast, please. I would love to. It'd be a lot of fun to be on Lex's show again. Just have to wait for maximum density of interesting things to say. Go back on down. Charles, what's actually behind Tate's arrest? I don't know. It's impossible to actually get any news that's actually objective. Basically, people start with what they want to print and they work their way backwards to a fact pattern to justify it. So it's hard to know anything. Tate seems to be kind of a little bit abrasive as a person. I know very little about him and never interacted with him. And media certainly hates him, and they want him to be burned to the ground. Your response to Josephine's accusations that IOG didn't want to change the parameters. I don't know who this Josephine is. I think it's a Twitter account that just seems to be conspiratorial. It's not about IOG changing parameters. The system is stable at the moment. Be nice to get all the parameters and tune them on a regular basis, but that's the entire point of 1694. You guys should be doing that. If you want to sign up and have a custodian sit down and think about how to tune the system every month so that it promotes some outcome, I think that's not the point of Cardano. The point of Cardano is the Cardano community self-regulates Cardano. So what we did is we got the system to a stable state, and with that stable state, it's able to survive and thrive. The next step is to get the community to take that stable state and create a government on top of it. So if you want to change the system parameters, then go ahead and get something like 1694 in. Now, obviously, there'll be some fine-tuning throughout this year. There's some final things to do as things change, like peer-to-peer gets fully implemented and Genesis gets fully implemented. But it defeats the entire purpose of decentralization to have a tuning committee that's federated. I don't really appreciate when people say that, we're power hungry or these types of things. The language that was used, it makes no sense to me. We're not power hungry. I mean, the whole point of 1694, the whole point of the MBO is literally to ensure every person in Cardano has a voice and the ability to influence the system. Might be the case that certain people will not get their way and they don't have scapegoats anymore. Maybe that's why they don't want those systems in, but I'm getting tired of it. And, we got to work together, and we need to get the MBO up, and we need to get 1694 or something like it done and in the code so that you guys can run that. Camera went black. I think the camera's running. It's running for you guys. Billionaires has the only voice. People don't. Well, that's why we have crypto. Charles, can you talk about the current work Bruno Paleo is doing for IOHK? Any chance of doing a fireside chat with Bruno or Duncan? Bruno is no longer with IO. Duncan's still floating around. Be nice to do a fireside chat with him, especially when we have Ouroboros Laos out. Most of the JED work these days are being done by Cody, with Jean-Frédéric, the other author on JED, working on that. What are one of your minor goals or resolutions this year, not necessarily related to Cardano, but you personally? Well, I'm going to write all of them this weekend. That's one of my resolutions. But, I lose some weight, get healthy, practice the piano, get back into that. Haven't done it in years. I got a giant pile of books here. I'm going to start growing cactuses. As you know, I grow mushrooms. And I got this lovely book on cacti and succulents. How about that? So I can learn a little bit about all the different succulents of the world. I mean, look at these things. Come on. What kind of mother wouldn't love a succulent like that? That's sexy. So just a lot of agriculture, keep building up the ranch. The ranch is coming along. More cabins are coming in, a lot of cleanup, 8 miles of roads being built, burying a bunch of power lines, putting in 3-phase power and burying that. 8.5 miles of trenching. For those of you in metric land, I think that's 14 kilometers, something crazy like that. So it's been it's going to be a long year of construction on a variety of projects. The clinic is nearly done, actually. We got it opening actually in February, the first phase of it. 18 months went into the construction there. We put geothermal in the parking lot. It's, I think, the only place in Wyoming that the snow melts in the parking lot. We got sewer line we trenched out there, took it from 4,000 to 10,000 square feet. And the first part will be primary care. Later on, other service lines will come online, the lab, the compound pharmacy, et cetera, et cetera. Hyperbaric medicine is another big priority. So that's going to be a huge lift, is getting Hoskins and Health and Wellness running correctly. A lot of skills I'd like to pick up, acquire. Like, I'm very interested in productivity, the whole building a second brain, that Diego Forte, a Brazilian guy who writes these books that are surprisingly unconcise, verbose. I would like to really get deep into Obsidian and second brain and productivity hacks and tools. I'm going to build some form of headset. It'd be really cool to do something that puts photobiomodulation together with EEG, together with pulsed electromagnetic fields. In fact, if you're an electrical engineer and you have some experience working with microcontrollers and doing hardware design, I'd love to talk to you, because I really want to build a headset. I've used every one on the market, and I'm not super happy with all of them, and I think a lot more good work could be done. So a lot of professional stuff, a lot of personal stuff. Always searching for more meaning in life, always searching for more purpose in life. But I'm going to write all that stuff down this weekend. Charles, any plans to attend CNFT Con 2023 in Vegas? You were a deciding factor for many of us last year. Oh, absolutely. I'm going to go back. I just don't know when it is, but I suspect it's the second half of the year. Nice work getting the bison out of the gate. There's always one. Oh, tell me about it. Boatload. Gets into the cattle guard, gets stuck in the cattle guard. Then you can't get the son of a bitch out, and you have to put a strap around them and lift them straight up with a tractor. And if you get lucky, they just stay still. Get unlucky, they start wigging out while you lift them. They break their legs. But we got lucky on that one. Woolly Mammoth update. Colossal's doing great. They're tearing it up. Lots of cool work that's happening. I visited their lab in December, and in Dallas, they're working on multiple animal lines outside of the woolly mammoth. Hopefully they'll be able to announce something soon, but I can't mention any more than that because I have insider info and I have to keep it secret. You're looking good, Charles. How's the workouts going? Pretty good. Just raspy voice. Will Cardano ever be able to scale to serve 1 billion people? Leos do the job. I think Leos is a massive step in that direction, combined with Mithril sidechains and Hydra alongside the evolution of those technologies. I think we'll get there. How can I get in contact about a nice painting for your new clinic? Just go to hoskinsonhealth.com and send us an email. Charles, any plan to sit down with Crypto Crow? Yep, absolutely love Crow. It'd be a lot of fun to spend some time with him. Did you see Avatar 2? I did. I really enjoyed the visuals. I thought the plot was garbage, but it was a fun movie and worth the money. Thoughts on the tiered pricing model or any scheme to enable pay for transaction priority? Yeah, and not just avoiding front running, but also congestion control and get rid of min fee and these other things. We're going to write 2 SIPs, one bundled with the Leo SIPs, and then one as a standalone for the Genesis era. And I think the Genesis era has a better chance of getting through quickly because it's not a major change, but it's necessary to get that in. And that and Babel fees are just two low-hanging fruits that really need to get done. Any thoughts on Algorand? You made a tweet about their latest achievement. I like the Algorand team. I've always enjoyed Silvio, and John Woods used to work for me, and he's over there. There's a lot of good people there. I've been following Dan Bonet and his students forever. Craig Gentry went over there. Tal Robin went over there. It's a very good team, a very solid team. There's a lot of good thought, and there's a lot of opportunity for cross-blockchain interoperability, and they have some ideas that would be useful to the Cardano side. So I really do believe it's going to be a good collaboration if we can figure out a way to get there. Do you think Lace will be on Q1? Yeah, I do. The beta's going along really well. The team's working hard. Most everybody's back to work. You just productivity goes to hell during Christmas, and everybody's really back in the game around January 15th. So next week, they're kind of back in the game. Mentally, they're getting there, but then they're fully there the week after. And then we can start killing it. Charles, can you ARF? Charles, did all the congressional legislative work you were doing in D.C. get put on pause after the SBF staff? For the most part, yeah. It was the most depressing thing. And I just sat there as I watched all that come collapsing down. Not only did it create a big financial hit for everybody in the industry and limit our opportunities and create cascading failures, but I knew it would have a regulatory implication and bad policy would come from it. So this kid, he just keeps fucking us again and again. I feel like Kavanaugh, saying they're pissing on us. Vic Mackey's pissing on us. How does it taste to have piss in your mouth? That's what SBF did to us, which is just sad, fucked up. But that's who he is. And who knows? Maybe he'll get away with it. But we'll just keep moving on. From Shade Man, hey, I miss you. Well, I miss you too, Shade Man. Charles, why did Girolamo Cardano kill himself? Well, because he wanted his prediction of his death to be true. How do you manage all this stuff? Cardano, your clinic, the space. Well, a good time management system. I have multiple EAs. I have independent staffs that deal with these types of things, good operating officers, wonderful people like Jeremy Maroney and JJ Seiler and Tam Hassan and others. So that helps a lot, but I do need a better organization system to be able to manage all of it because it's starting to grow. Where's JJ? He's floating around somewhere. It's his day off. Caramel massage. No, that's a really bad idea. Chocolate massage. Caramel massage. Very bad. Charles, how is Cardano decentralized when 1% wallets own a majority of the coins? That's just not true. It's a lie. Just lie. Go ahead and lie. Okay. Any chance of appearing on Tim Pool's show in 2023? Well, if Tim invites me, I'd be happy to go on. Hey, Charles, are you pissed off right now? No, not really. Feel pretty good. Just a little sick. Why do you have two pencils? They're pens, not pencils. Why do you have two pencils in your shirt? In case one of them runs out of ink. Will you ever accept the Huskies? No, because they're worthless by design. They get value. You've missed the whole point. How old are you? 35. I'm not pissed. I'm happy. It's the children who are wrong. Dear Charles, will you eventually go bald hair like Jeff Bezos? Is that okay with you? Absolutely. If it goes back even a little further, I'm probably just shave the damn thing and go and look like what's his name, Bryan Cranston or something like that. Any thoughts on the Gavin Woods debacle? I'm not aware of a debacle with Gavin Woods. You guys post something about it. I'm sorry. Lifted any weights this year? Yeah, the trainer is actually coming next week. Any advice for building a business while also having a dating life? Don't. Go build and get the foundations laid a little bit and then go do your dating life. It's real hard to reconcile the two together. It's a bit too much. Something's going to suffer. You can be in a relationship, but you won't actually be there in the relationship. Why not grow new hair at your clinic? Easier said than done. It'd be cool to grow a sheet of tissue and have that tissue have hair from areas of the head that don't lose it, and then transplant it from the tissue to the head. Currently, when they do hair transplants, they take a little strip from the back of the head, or they kind of evenly take hair from the back of the head and they transplant it up front. That's why when you see people who've had hair transplants like Elon Musk, you'll see this crescent moon scar on the back of their head. So it'll go from about this ear to the other ear, and it just goes kind of like that. And so if you look really closely at some of the pictures, you'll see that. And, it's how it's typically done. If you can grow skin in a pan and actually has proper hair in it, then you could take the grafts and put the grafts up. And if you combine that with like stem cells and red light therapy and just good supplements, they usually can hold. The problem is we can't grow the skin and get the hair quite yet. But I think that's coming in about 5 years to 10 years with how tissue engineering is coming along. And then it'll be great because you can grow as much hair as you want. Hair goes up and it's viable hair. Who cares if some of it falls out? You can keep grafting until you get it done. With the other effort, that there's only so much you can take from the back. Oh, look, it's Crybaby Hoskins. Wah, 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 wah. Give it up, guys. Where are your Plague Doctor toys? I got a few of them in here, actually. Glad you asked about it. How about that? Did you not lose weight fasting for 11 days? I did. Fuck you, man. 14 pounds. And it was actually 14 days, by the way. 12 days, nothing, and 2 days refeeding. Well, this guy remembers, if I bring a bottle of Macallan 30, can I tag along on the Antarctica trip to Mount Terror? Of course you can. When the quant code release, you promised it a few times. Yeah, I forgot about that. We should do that. I'll make a note for it. Any update on 134.4? I believe we've hit that 70% threshold from the stake pool operators. If we have, then I suspect that it'll be February because it takes about a month. Charles, do you ever drink soda? What's your favorite? Very rarely. Charles, do you have children? No. Any cool updates on the mushroom front? Well, we are looking into how we can cultivate cordyceps mushrooms and get the chitin to do it without having to harvest them from insects themselves. Charles, how do you feel about the agricultural supply chain and what's wrong with eating bugs? Well, there's nothing intrinsically wrong with eating insects, but it's going to be forced upon us. It's going to be in everything. I can't believe it's not crickets. The supply chains are falling apart. We're getting a lot of poor quality food, highly processed, highly refined food, not healthy. It's going to cause more diabetes, more cancer. And all the people that make the good food are being pushed out of business or forced offer to different economic tiers. It's not a good situation, the food supply chain situation. And it's by design. I love when people ask this question. How'd the buffalo stuck and the cattle great situation end up? Well, first off, they get stuck because they try to walk across it. That's how you get stuck. And you guys know how it ended up. I posted the video of them lifting it out. Bison's fine, ran off. It's really not that complicated. Bugs are toxic. Well, not really. I mean, you guys eat crustaceans, right? Think about it. It's kind of like the insects of the sea. You eat a lobster. Charles, we clinic focus on mitochondrial health. One of the best ways of doing that is through photobiomodulation, so red light therapy. And it actually helps restore, regenerate mitochondria and have them release more ATP. So, yeah, that's definitely a big one. There's different ways you can focus on that. Any good books you've read recently? Well, right now I'm reading James Nestor's Breath, and I'll give you guys a full review on it. But it's pretty cool stuff. I mean, you get erectile tissue in your nose, so your nose can get hard. And actually, I didn't know this, but breathing through your left nostril is connected to your parasympathetic nervous system, and breathing through your right nostril is connected through your sympathetic nervous system. So if you want to be more alert, all you have to do is close your left nostril and breathe through your right, breathe out through your left, and do that for about 2 minutes. If you want to calm down and relax a little bit, then you go ahead and close your right nostril and breathe through your left. And one of the other things that came out of the James Nestor's book is tape your mouth when you sleep. Breathe through your nose. Big deal. Huge health consequences if you're a mouth breather versus a nose breather. Good research on that. How do you know if you're in a meditative state? It depends on the brain waves and frequencies that they run at. But there's actually on an EEG, you can track them. And what you do is you take these monks who have been meditating for 4 or 5 decades and they're like the best in the world. You take a look at the states of their brain, and then you can contrast and compare that to normal operating states. And it gives you a kind of a baseline of what a meditative state looks like. This is the bullshit. If you found a cure for cancer, kind of like some guy, would you market it and undercut the big pharmacos? There is no cure for cancer. Okay? It's a lie. You conspiracy theorists who have very little medical knowledge, you come in and you say, well, there's a cure for it all. There's a cure for first, what type of cancer? Talking about a colon cancer mutation that's occurred. Pick your favorite gene, and it's spread and went to a person's liver versus lung cancer versus brain cancer versus a malignant melanoma versus leukemia or non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. These are all different things. They're all different mutations. So what? There's one universal cure for all of these things. Cancer is where your cells, they mutate because they divide. And what ends up happening is they get into a state where they do two things. They can hide and replicate. Hide in that your body doesn't recognize them as a foreign agent to be killed, and replicate in that they replicate as much as possible. It's not a conspiracy. It's a fact of life. And there are millions of people around the world who wake up every day, they treat and deal with and try to cure variants of cancer. There is no giant pharmaceutical conspiracy where they prevent a cure from cancer from existing. Okay? Because the very people researching it and running these companies die from cancer. Steve Jobs died from cancer. Okay? Billionaires die from it. Kings die from it. Presidents die from it. The rich and the old. It's the emperor of all maladies. It's 1 out of 4 of us will die from it. 1 out of 3 of us will get it. And it's mostly a disease of the old. About 10% of the cancer cases are under the age of 35, under the age of 40. The other 90% are over, with it growing exponentially as you get past 60 and 70 and 80. And the vast majority of men will get probably something. Basal cell carcinoma, prostate cancer, lung cancer. Vast majority of women will get something. And that's just life. And it's sad because I really do wish we had a cure for it. And I've lost good friends from it. And it hits people in unpredictable times and unpredictable ways. And it destroys people's quality of life. Now, you're absolutely right that there's a misalignment of financial priorities in the pharmaceutical industry. They have strong priorities to look into new variants of chemotherapy that do not necessarily provide a curative outcome, meaning it doesn't cure the cancer. It just potentially increases survivability. So let's say you have aggressive tumors and they're growing, and instead of 6 months, you get 8 months, but your quality of life is the same or worse. That's a drug, and they'll make hundreds of thousands of dollars from that. It's a racket. It's a very bad business that ultimately does not improve people's quality of life. And in many cases, you watch them die. Someone lived with me who had colon cancer, and I watched her die. And the chemo that she got in the last rounds was so harsh that her nails turned black and fell off on her hands. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. And that's just the nature of the disease. Now, there's a lot of next generation cutting edge treatments that are coming out. The immunotherapies are really cool because that's where, remember those 2 features, it replicates a lot and it can hide. You take the hiding away. There's targeted chemotherapies where they're inactive to normal cells, but you pair them with something where they only become active in cancer cells. It's pretty cool stuff. I read a paper the other day where they actually use these tiny micro bubbles that would be absorbed by cancerous tumors and then use ultrasound tech to actually explode the bubbles like bombs, little smart bombs inside tumors. So there's an incredible amount of creativity. The mRNA stuff, setting COVID aside, just probably pretty toxic these days. I don't think anybody likes those vaccines anymore. The original intent of BioNTech and Moderna were personalized cancer vaccines using mRNA. And I still do believe there are great opportunities there. And they're very well funded, those types of operations. So it's a complicated topic. And if you want to understand more about it, really educate yourself, there's a wonderful book called The Emperor of All Maladies. And I recommend you read it. Did you read James Nestert's book on breathing? I'm reading it right now. What do you think of the Died Suddenly documentary? I think that we're in a situation where it's incredibly difficult to know what's true anymore. It's very clear that the media has taken a position. They don't particularly care if that position's accurate or not. Their view is the vaccines have no risk at all. Anyone who says otherwise should be deplatformed and is being irresponsible. And they work perfectly, 100% of the time. And if they don't, it's your fault. Okay? 3% of Haiti is vaccinated. The other 97% are not. There's no pandemic there. Same for Uganda. The WHO says, well, obviously we need to vaccinate them. That's the response we should have. Then you have in China XBB.1.5 spreading like wildfire, and they say like 10 million people could die from it, but they have a 92% vaccination rate. So something just doesn't make sense in the data if they're preventing the spread and they actually behave like proper vaccines do. So there's more to the story there. Problem is, it's just damn near impossible to get good information because everybody's terrified to comment or publish. They're afraid they'll lose their funding, their medical license. State of California, they passed a law that basically said if you don't agree with the orthodoxy, whatever it is, you'll be stripped of your right to practice medicine. It's not informed consent. It's a violation of fundamental medical ethics when you prevent a patient from knowing the potential downsides and risks of a treatment. When you go, they say, I'm going to do this spinal surgery. The orthopedic surgeon, he has to tell the patient that there's a risk factor there and bad things could happen. If you remove that from a medicine and say there's only upside, no downside, it's unethical and it's wrong. And it really makes me sad. So you have these documentaries like Died Suddenly, and they're interviewing morticians and showing these spider clots, and they talk about the incidences of myocarditis, and who knows? Just who knows? It's impossible to know. It's impossible to comment on it. And if you take a position, there's a lot of anger, and all the institutions have lost faith and credibility. There needs to be two big investigations. One investigation into the origins of COVID, and there needs to be an investigation into the entire creation and distribution of the current vaccines that we have, and a big analysis and a very open way of the data. And then at least we have something. The problem is trust is so broken that no matter what happens at this point, let's be honest here, a large group of people will not believe what they're told because everything is so conspiratorial now. I'm not the Cardano CEO. What happened with Paul Oakenfold? Oh, it's pretty simple. He wanted to do an album, and then his manager's like, give us $1 million to do it. And I'm like, no, I'm more than happy to collaborate, and we can make money together off of it, and it'd be a lot of fun. But I don't pay to play, man. Didn't pay anything with Snoop Dogg or Champ. He's just a cool dude. Showed up at the ranch, said, let's go shoot a music video. So we did. It's an unpaid relationship because we're friends. And there's all kinds of cool business we could do together at some point in the future. So, if celebrities, they find out pretty quickly who I am because they'll say, oh, we want to do something. I say, great. And they say, oh, by the way, you got to pay us. And I say, well, Solana's over there, Polly's over there, and, Polka Dot's there, and best of luck. Let's see which one will bite. But, you come my neck of the woods. We're working together because there's merit in that. There's mutual benefit in that. But I've never paid for an interview. I've never paid to speak at a conference, and I've never paid for a celebrity endorsement. You sound sick. Yeah, a little under the weather. Thoughts on the Jordan Peterson, the Canadian re-education camp? It's so crazy. This is like the Rorschach's test of whether something is acceptable or not. So If you're liberal, just take a ride with me. Let's say that a physician criticizes Donald Trump, and it's 2019, and says Trump is a poopy face and bad guy, et cetera, and he lives in Texas. And the Texas State Medical Board says this is inappropriate, unprofessional conduct, and you must attend 6 months of training, or otherwise you lose your medical license and your career. Would you be okay with that? You say, this is America, it's free speech. There's no patient here. There's no misconduct about the care of somebody. Let's be honest, you'd say that. So Jordan Peterson criticizes Trudeau and criticizes some other people over a social media account. Then a board says, well, despite the fact that this has nothing to do with the care of a patient, your conduct during the care of a patient, the doctor-patient relationship, the counselor-patient relationship, the use of confidential information, anything at all for psychology, you must now go through 6 months of re-education. Otherwise, you're going to lose your ability to practice as a psychologist. Now, at the end of the day, those comments they politically disagreed with. Why is it a professional committee is now deciding which political speech is appropriate amongst professionals? So now, for the future, if you are Canadian, you must be of a certain political persuasion if you're going to become a psychologist, because it's no longer a condition of your knowledge, your capacity, and your skill and empathy as a therapist or clinician that determines your ability to be an effective psychologist. It's also your politics. And if you don't have the prescribed government-approved politics, sorry, you can't practice. I don't want to live in a world where professional boards do this with lawyers, accountants, doctors, psychologists, or other people. I'd like to live in a world where the people who practice these things are free to have political opinions, social opinions that are diverse, whether they be conservative or they be liberal or communist or fascist, everything in between. Okay? We have every freedom to disagree with them. We have every freedom to disassociate with them. We have every freedom to think they're quacks or bad actors. But it is an insanely dangerous thing when you politicize a professional body who's there to ensure that the person practicing is practicing accordance to the standards of care for patients, and say that standards of care now include no criticism of political regimes we agree with. Taking Peterson completely out of this. Now, apparently half the people, because they hate him, don't think that's a valid argument. They think it's totally fine. He's being a little crybaby. He should go for his re-education. But they missed the broader point of how dangerous it is to politicize a professional body, and whether it's been done by a conservative government or a liberal government or anything in between, it is never appropriate. And that's just the world we live in now. So, what happens when the pendulum swings to the other side? Exactly. And the pendulum does swing. Oh, yes, it does. And the more radical you let one side be, the more radical the other side gets. Any idea how severely input endorsers might increase the hardware requirements of stake pool operators? It's a very good question and something we're looking into with a lot of simulation and modeling. By May, I think we'll have a pretty good answer for that. Do you meditate? Yes. I'm extremely interested in meditation. It's one of the guiding principles of my life at this point. Have you seen Ancient Apocalypse, and what are your thoughts on advanced Ice Age civilizations? It's pretty good evidence that some sort of catastrophic event happened, about 11,000 years ago, give or take. Probably we were hit by some sort of celestial body, like an asteroid or a comet or something, and it badly damaged an advanced civilization. Problem is, 10,000 years can erase pretty much anything except for plastic. So there's scatterings of evidence about it, and certainly some interesting things you can connect. And people do shows about it. I'm not an archaeologist, and I don't study these things for a living, so it's fun to talk about them and think about them. But it's a bit difficult to actually know what's real and true. And I don't think anybody, regardless of their credentials or background, knows for certain because it was just too long ago. There are certainly monuments like Tobeki Gobi, over in Turkey, and other things we found that are super, super Paleolithic, like 10,000 plus years old, and would be an indication of a more sophisticated society. Hi, Charles. Do you think the situation with Ukraine and Russia could be a reason we get into World War III? Certainly could create it. Absolutely could. There's plenty of things that can trigger that. Invasion of Taiwan could be another. It doesn't take a lot to start a world war when people lose rationality. Has 3x plus 1 been solved? I think you're referring to the Syracuse problem or the Collatz conjecture, and the answer is no. Can we find a way to get rid of plastic? I think honestly what's going to end up happening is that somebody's going to genetically engineer bacteria to eat plastic. It's already happened in certain cases. It'll get out into the environment, and then all our plastic will get diseases and decay. Do you think we will be forced to use CBDCs? Yes, 100%. I think cash will be banned and CBDCs will be tied to social credit, and a small group of people will have complete control over your money. Don't like it? Use crypto and vote against any politician supporting CBDCs. Hard to do, though, when you live in a two-party system, isn't it? It's not dystopian. I mean, they're just saying it. Absolutely saying it. You guys drink it from a cup. What more warning signs do you want? We went from 2 weeks to slow the spread to show me papers to go to McDonald's. Think about that. Think about how pernicious that is. We went from completely unrestricted free speech on internet to socially acceptable to deplatform anybody we politically disagree with. You think governments aren't going to connect money to speech and deplatform people? Read about Operation Choke Point. Just recently happened. Thoughts on Balaji's idea of network states? I am definitely going to spend some time and read his book. And, I like Balaji. We're Facebook friends and I've known him for years. I just haven't had time to really dig into the concept. Tell me more about Operation Choke Point. Google it. Surprised by the Twitter files? No one is surprised by it. You notice how the media didn't cover it at all. Zero, zilch. Just Rocket Man bad. It's a great question. How do you stay so positive with all that goes on? Is there a trick to dealing with it? I'm not going to lie, it gets hard. It really does get hard not to become negative and cynical, especially when you see again and again and again people behave in ways that are so just damn insane. Um, After you've gotten some training and you spend some time and really think deeply about the consequences of propaganda, it's really not hard to see when people have been propagandized. So propaganda, and you can look for the symptoms of it. Mention polarizing subject XYZ. A person will immediately develop a strong emotional reaction to it, positively or negatively, and have strong opinions that aren't their own. They didn't come up with them, they've been installed in them. And then when you try to show them contrary facts or evidence, they just, no burden of proof is capable of dissuading them. Okay, so they'll say, like, there's a video of this guy murdering someone. I know it's made up, it's a deep fake. That's propaganda in a nutshell. We all suffer in some way from it, where mass media is constructed in a way to do that because it gives people power. As long as we hate each other, we can't pay attention to the people running things. It's that simple. All these wedge issues that divide people, at the end of the day, we don't talk about energy. We don't talk about money. We don't talk about education. We don't talk about sustainability. We don't talk about the consequences of globalization. We don't talk about consent. We don't talk about rights, fundamental human rights, the preservation of them. We don't talk about rites of passage. We don't talk about the preservation of traditions that have carried humanity for thousands of years through. All of these things, we tend to just ignore because Orange Man bad or Biden is demented or pick your favorite wedge issue. Why? Because propaganda is used to make us ignore those things. Now, there's other people who do think about those things and they have very thought out opinions about what to do and where to go. And they get to make decisions about those things because we let them, because we're so distracted by the other things. Mass media has no point in informing you. CNN, Fox News, Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, these things don't actually exist as journalistic organizations. There's no such thing as investigative journalism. There's no such thing as objective truth in journalism. They read all these books about history. Okay, movies coming out next year about the history of Ethereum. Do you think that's a true thing? No, it's just narrative. It's made up to do a purpose. Who these people are, and they get paid money, they get fame, they get success, they get power from being in these circumstances. So it's hard to stay positive because you see all the people that get caught up in it and they get absorbed into the propaganda. And you can mock them. They sit in a car alone themselves with a mask on, 26 boosters, worried to death that some disease is going to kill them that's been floating around now for 3 years, and not really listening to anybody say anything to the contrary, deplatforming people. They get super angry about various things. You can't convince them otherwise. Trump won the election. It just happened. And everything else is a lie. No evidence to the contrary can be used to produce. So, what do? You just have empathy for them and sympathy for them as people. And there needs to be a great deprogramming. It happens organically, because people subconsciously, the propaganda can't get deep enough into the brain that it completely overrides and brainwashes everything. There's always an easy tension that exists when a person's been propagandized between the perception of truth and the reality of truth, and they feel it and taste it. And they don't necessarily know how to vocalize it, but they just feel an unease, like they're standing on quicksand. And there in that gap is the opportunity for truth to grow. And counter philosophies are required for it to inoculate people from the mind viruses that were given on a regular basis. It makes me sad more than anything else. Try to stay positive, but I'm just sad because we could do so much better. If we all just got along and worked together with the technology that we have, we really could deliver to the world a utopia. Instead, we hate each other, and we gain nothing from hating each other. Did you meet Fabian? Yeah, he's a guy who created, I think, the ERC20 token standard. Been around the space for a long time. I'm sure you'd say terrible things about me because he's part of the Ethereum crew, but I've never had any problems with him, and he seems to be a really nice and smart fellow. Charles, how do we get Dorsey and Block to collaborate using Cardano instead of Lightning? They won't. They're Bitcoin maxis. Hey, Charles, what do you think about transhumanism? It's unavoidable. Humans always want an edge and on optimization. I mean, people use red light therapy on their balls. They sell these little cups from the private gym, put them on your balls. It gives you more testosterone. Okay, just think about how far people are willing to go for a 1% edge or 2% edge. If you come and say, hey, I put this cybernetic implant in you, or I modify your genes, or I give you this drug. Yeah, it's Dave Asprey's entire career. So people will always do that. So there's a strong, strong incentive to pursue it. The question is when, not if. Red light therapy, borderline crazy. No, not at all. Actually, it works quite well. There's over 1,000 studies on it. 1,000. It's very common in Asia, and it's starting to work its way into America. Is that a Waterhouse? Well, you recognized it. The other one's from Gustav Klimt. Charles, is that a Hellraiser Lament configuration puzzle cube back there? Yes. And if you play with it, there's these guys that show up and they have such things to show you. Have you ever had issues with pens leaking in your shirt pocket? I definitely have. Charles, thank you for being real, speaking the truth. Very rare these days. What do you prefer, AK or AR-15? AR-15 by far. But let's be honest here. You got to get a Henry, 1873. I'm a rancher. Come on. Yeah, this guy gets it. No pocket protector equals big balls. I just love living dangerously. Did the monk who protested the Vietnam War meditate through his death? He peacefully burned to death. How is that possible? Tell me about it. That's a person that is 100% committed. Or you could be like Prince Harry and write a book about it. They were so mean to me. Oh no. I lived a life of extreme luxury. And I married a crazy woman. And she was very angry that she couldn't be the face of the entire royal institution. So now I have to divorce my whole family. And read a book. And I killed 25 people as an Apache pilot. Oh, that guy. Have you ever eaten wild boar? Yes, I have. Shoes or boots? Currently wearing boots. Ada is trash and will never work. That's not very Buddha of you, white Buddha. This guy. Would you do the Political Compass live on stream? Oh boy, it would be fun to do the Nolan chart or something like that. That's actually a good idea. I should do that on one of these live streams with JJ. Saturday night plans. Well, I was gonna, get some Saturday Night Fever, and hang out with the Bee Gees, although only 2 of them are left. He's reached equilibrium. Just being honest. Same with ETH. The forest is filled with many cryptos. The shit coins flow. Any drug or supplement for long-term social anxiety, conventional therapy doesn't help. They've been having incredible luck with MDMA. There was a phase 3 placebo-controlled clinical trial that came out of, it was published in Nature in 2021. And basically they showed that it had tremendous results for anxiety, PTSD, and other conditions. And there's now a pretty big conversation going on at the FDA about potentially rescheduling MDMA from Schedule 1 to something else, maybe like Schedule 3, like ketamine. But that's a drug that really, if you have a well-trained practitioner and you use it in a clinical setting under the supervision of that practitioner, seems to be really good at having people deal with the root causes of anxiety. And it's pretty remarkable, the results that they were getting. It's a breakthrough therapy where 2/3 of the people in the placebo-controlled double-blind clinical trial actually showed considerable improvement. And that's the great tragedy of psychedelics, is that they seem to be really useful for tons of therapeutic interventions, whether it be depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, end-of-life issues. In fact, there's an annual conference I'm going to be going to. Let me show you. MAPS. Here we go. And actually, it's going to be in Denver this time around. So if you guys want to go to MAPS with me, I will be there. Let me go ahead and bring it up for you. There we go. And basically, MAPS is a kind of a organization. Let's see here. It's June 19th to 23rd. And it's a multidisciplinary association for psychedelic studies, and they look at the medical side of the use of psychedelics. And they have all these great studies at Yale and Johns Hopkins and other places, and all the good practitioners there. And they talk about everything from psilocybin, which is the mushroom stuff, to mescaline, which is in San Pedro or peyote, to synthetic drugs like MDMA or LSD, and how you can use these in a therapeutic setting to be able to resolve an issue that a person has. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah, right here. What do you think about psilocybin for psychotherapy? It makes a lot of sense. The theory behind it is that your brain can process certain events that happen to you. Some people, they have a hard time clearing the queue. So you get raped, you get blown up, your parents get murdered, you get abused as a child, you get attacked, you're the victim of X, Y, and Z, you develop cancer, you discover suddenly you only have 3 months to live, whatever it might be. Normal brains have a hard time absorbing that reality, dealing and clearing it to a point where you return to the state of mind before you were there. All these psychedelics, a lot of them reset what's called the default mode network, and they seem to have this ability to push things through the queue, so that working with a therapist, basically you can clear the house out, and well, you have memory of that event. It no longer is in a stuck state where it continues to corrode and cause harm to the patient. And everybody who's used these substances reports similar experiences in that when they work, they're transformative in 3 dimensions. One, they're transformative in that they actually cure the underlying condition. 2, they're transformative in that usually they cure it in a much shorter period of time when used appropriately than alternative therapies. And 3, you tend not to necessarily need additional doses. So that's why I use the Q concept, because once you've pushed it through, it doesn't magically get back in. You've cleared it. Kind of like a bacterial infection. You take penicillin or something and suddenly it's gone. Now, where it works, doesn't work for everything. And there are certain states that you can't fix. You can't fix, for example, schizophrenia with psychedelics. In fact, it's contraindicated, can potentially cause a lot of harm. So it's an understudied area because there was a renaissance in the 40s and 50s and 60s when they were still legal, with people studying them and lots of papers. It went into a dark age with the rescheduling, and now it's starting to open its way back up, thanks to the hard work of people at MAPS and other places. And we're starting to see good science. And I'm sorry if you're a medical practitioner and you forced these vaccines on the entire world and told us because it went through a phase 3 placebo-controlled clinical trial, it's safe and effective. How then can you look at the phase 3 placebo-controlled clinical trial of MDMA that's published in Nature, not exactly a lightweight journal, and that shows breakthrough therapy, and say that's not sufficient evidence for rescheduling of a drug that's been around for a very long time? Let's be honest about it. That's the problem with psychedelics, is no one is honest about it. Charles, are you anti-SPF? I always have been. There was a reason why we never got listed, thank God, on FTX. Charles, I just had a baby on January 1st. Well, congratulations. Charles, do you know the benefits to health for the plant-based diet? For some people, it seems to work incredibly well. In fact, if you look at the Okinawa data, that's a blue zone, and a lot of people live into their 90s or 100s. Their diets are mostly plant-based. Go to France and other areas, there's certain blue zones in the Mediterranean, and they eat lots of rich butters and meats and other things. They also live a long time. I think there's a big genetic component to food, and I think that there's a microbiome component to food. And those are 2 factors that are outside of just what you put in your body. And I think really the hierarchy of harm isn't whether it's meat, like a carnivore style diet, or plant diet, but really, is it refined? Is it processed? That's the big one. Okay, so you can drink cane sugar, Coca-Cola, or you can drink high fructose corn syrup. I think we both kind of know which one is the lesser of the two evils there. So, in all of our experience with nutrition, just dealing with refined and processed is the first step. And then there is certainly a genetic component. There's companies called like GenoPalette is one, and others that actually sequence your genome and they take a look at your genetic data and they try to map a diet accordingly. So that makes a lot of sense. If you have a biome and a genetic profile, that actually seems to be more attuned for certain types of plants as opposed to meats. Makes sense. It's hard to completely cut meat out of your diet, though. There are things that you only can get from meat, and to synthesize them otherwise is difficult. That's why a lot of people go vegan route. If they're not pathologically careful about things, they tend to atrophy a bit. Same to be said on the carnivore side. I'm absolutely not convinced at all that you can live without plant-based fiber. And they have all these carnivore people who seem to think otherwise. So nutrition is another one of those holy wars, and people fight each other over it. But I don't take it that seriously. I just tend to look at it from the fundamentals of refined and processed and throw those away. And we all have difficulty doing it because some of the most delicious things in the world are refined and processed. All these artificial flavors, sugars, these other things, they're so much sweeter, in many cases tastier than a lot of natural foods, or at least we're acclimated and attuned to them. And to purge that takes quite a bit of time. I've noticed a lot of people are pretty down on seed oils as well, and they seem to think that's the root of all evil. But again, you just kind of get back into that holy war of things. Alligator meat's the best meat for you on the planet. Well, I certainly like alligator tail. I'm not gonna poo-poo that. Well, it even gets more interesting. I'm a rancher, and you say meat and fat is all you need. Well, what type of meat? If a cow spends its entire life eating really nasty chemically stuff, processed stuff, eating other cows, that's where mad cow came from, eating a lot of grains, these types of things. Is that okay? Is that good meat? What about a grass-fed free-range cattle or free-range grass-fed bison like I have on my ranch? Is the meat and fat that you get from that better? So not all meat is created equally. Yeah, I've seen this. Read the China study, the largest nutrition study to date. And again, they always go to these plant-based diets and they say that don't eat fat and it'll kill you and you'll get heart disease. It's like, salmon are awesome due to short lifespans. They don't pick up many metals like other fish. But they can have parasites. In fact, go to YouTube and see like salmon parasites, and you'll see in the supermarkets little worms crawling around. Every animal can have a downside. There's no such thing as the perfect animal. Heart disease is the number one killer in America. It's not a plant-based diet that does that. You see, that's the lie that people tell. It's smoking. You see, cholesterol going through your arteries, it doesn't do anything natively, guys, high cholesterol or not. The problem is when the vessels get inflamed, the cholesterol gets lodged in them, and that's what causes the atherosclerosis and the plaques and clots and other problems. You have to have both the inflammation and the presence of the cholesterol. And people think, oh, I eat the meat, it'll just kill me. Well, no, it's the smoking that does it. Why and how do we know? Well, people ate high-fat animal diets in the 19th century, and our heart attack rates were really low. You have all the data for that. It wasn't very common. Then got a humongous spike in the 1930s and another humongous spike in the 1960s. Ansel Keys blamed it on fat. It's one of the biggest piece of shit science pieces ever. What happened was World War I. They included cigarettes in the rations of the soldiers, gave them to free. They made millions of young men in America addicted to cigarettes. They smoked for 20 years, 30 years, and lo and behold, the cancer rates, the emphysema rates, the heart attack rates, they suddenly skyrocketed. The 1940s, World War II, women went to the workplace, and they started giving free cigarettes to all the women in the workplace. And the soldiers got free cigarettes in their rations. Massive surge of smoking rates. And lo and behold, huge surge in heart attacks in the 1960s. Almost perfect correlation there. If all these fats and animal meats, which all the ranchers and the farmers and everyday Americans ate all throughout the 19th and 18th and 17th and 16th century, caused huge heart disease, why wouldn't we have stable all the way through? And we've done all this low-fat garbage since the 1970s, and yet the rates continue to stay sky high. The inflammation is caused by other things, processed carbohydrates and smoking. Your plant-based diet, you're not going to get those processed carbohydrates. You're getting slow carbs. They're much different metabolically. Sorry, guys. It's just how it works. The same thing I'd say to a person saying it's too hard to do surgery. You're going to build an app that is going to have billions of dollars of your money, billions of dollars. And you have to make it secure, run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, perform as intended, and have a complex protocol design. And the person writing that is saying, well, I know how to do all of that, but I can't use a particular programming language. No, if they can't use the particular programming language, they can't do the other stuff too. They can't reason about identity and metadata and get it certified against the formal spec. They're not going to survive a security audit. They're not going to have a appropriately designed protocol. You use this at your peril, you will lose all your money. It's just that simple. The least interesting thing is the language. The most interesting thing is the design, and that's much harder. It's an interesting one. I mean, suicide has always been with us, but it's troubling because there are so many different categories, and it is one of the leading killers of the young. Part of it is, I think, untreated illnesses, PTSD, these things, especially in military and law enforcement, can be everything from trauma to TBIs, these types of things. I think the biggest issue with suicide is a lack of meaning. At the end of the rainbow, a lot of people, they get into a mental state and they don't see a purpose for life. Nietzsche used to say that people could endure anyhow if they know the why. And if you don't know the why, then you're just suffering needlessly. If you're suffering with a purpose, then you can always believe that one day when you get where you want to go, it'll be better. So people get caught in these thought patterns and they get worse and worse and they escalate and they don't believe they'll ever end and they don't believe they'll ever get resolved. So there's actually a whole school of psychology that studies the quest for meaning. It's called logotherapy. It was started by Viktor Frankl. It's one of the three fields of psychotherapy, competing with Jung and Adler. And basically, logotherapy is just the mechanisms a person goes through to discover their meaning in life, the purpose in life, as subjective as that might be. And it turns out when people have goals, they have a purpose, they have meaning, there's not a single study that you can find that says that that person has a higher suicide rate than others. In fact, it's quite the contrary. They usually have a significantly lower suicide rate and incident overall of mental health. Why? Because they have the resilience to be able to get through ephemeral states of mind, and they build to climb out of things. Now, there are certainly biological components to these things. If your neurotransmitters are all screwed up, it's hard not to be. People are born bipolar, schizophrenia, and other conditions. And you can't will yourself out of it. You can't be like, I'm not going to be bipolar today. And so it's always difficult because if you don't get treatment for those things, they can have catastrophic impacts on your life, not just suicide, but obviously your relationships. Look at Kanye West. There's a very good possibility that Charlie Sheen, Kanye West, these others suffer from some form of bipolar disorder. We don't know, we'd have to see the medical records, but you could kind of map the behavior to the description of those things. And it's plausible to imagine a world where that's a correct diagnosis. Now, from afar, you say, well, we can't do anything. And society is entertained by their crazy antics. But deep inside, you have these people who are really hurt and they're going through hell. And basically, you're witnessing self-destruction real time. The destruction of their businesses, the destruction of their commercial endeavors, their relationships, the respect in society, and ultimately their social connections, as well as their viability as actors, musicians, or other things. And we just say, oh, well, move on. So I think there's a meta component with the suicide rates as well. It's society just doesn't seem to care. We make other people's suffering a game. And it's hard to live in a society that lacks rites of passage, gamifies your pain, or derives entertainment from your pain and suffering, and doesn't seem to value at all your recovery, just your downfall. So probably a combination of those factors: a mental health epidemic, an addiction epidemic, an empathy epidemic, meta factors in the way that society is constructed, a large amount of meaning crisis in people. And, unfortunately, that's where we're at. And it's tough. It's real tough because it tends to affect the young. It's one of the few conditions that I think is still in the top 10 amongst the young, suicide. So a lot of people, a lot of potential, if only they just had the right foundations. They'd be able to get where they need to go. But anyway, that's conversation for a different time. And as Paul Harvey said, now you know the rest of the story. Thank you all for listening today. I'll cut a little short because my voice is not going to last much longer. Next time I'm on, I'll be back to normal, just a little under the weather today. Cheers.